basically what's happened is I've met you on the plane or at a coffee shop and we've dialogued and you ask me what I do, and then I give one of the answers that we've talked about. So basically I would whip something out and then talk about this. So when we talked about how we measure, because that's usually what comes up is, well, how do you tell how much love my kid has? And I say, well, we look at their developmental ecology. And we break that down to 7 factors. So when we talk about love, love is a very warm feeling. When you feel loved, you get that nice cozy feeling. So we compare love to the sun, right? Because the sun provides heat and warmth, and you feel it, and you know it's there. But we also just don't want to be feeling-based, we want to be science-based. So when we put this into a perspective of love with science, we would come up with a prism, because that's how you break light up. So we break love down into 7 categories that we call the 7 factors of developmental ecology, based on the colors in the color spectrum or the colors of the rainbow, which we call Roy G. Biv. So the first color is red, and red is the rule of 5 and the power of more. And basically what our research shows is that kids a lot of people say that, everyone needs 1 caring adult, but what research has shown is 5 is kind of this magic number, that if you have 5 caring adults in your life, you will have more opportunities to succeed in general. And so when you have these 5 adults, our research also shows that it doesn't matter who they are. Just caring adults in a kid's life. It could be a mom, a dad, an uncle, older brother, nephew that's older that we talked about at lunch. It could be a janitor, a coach, a teacher, a principal, and a faith community member. It could be a coach, a mom, mom's best friend, mom's sister, and grandpa. It doesn't really matter who they are, but these 5 adults in their life play a significant role in creating a support system that we call a web of support. So as they build this web of support, they contribute to the kid's life, we create this web, and that's going to prevent them from falling through the cracks. And what we call these are tangible and intangible supports. So orange is the first, and that's the tangible supports. And tangible supports are basically anything that's easy to measure. So what's something that's easy to measure as far as if you have it or don't have it? Money. Okay. What else? Food. Mm-hmm.
A safe home.
A safe home, yeah. Anything else?
Books,
yeah.
Backpack.
A backpack. School supplies. Really easy I could ask you on any day, do you have this? And you can tell me yes or no. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are the tangibles. Those are what we call the orange strings that create this web of support. Then we have yellow, and these are the intangibles. And the intangibles are the things that are harder to measure because they sometimes change. All these virtues. So things like integrity, character, humility, patience, honesty. A lot of things that you can't touch, but you can tell that they're there through behavior and actions. So that would be the intangibles. So as these adults are throwing these strings, the more strings they throw, the thicker the web. We do like to talk about thin or thick webs because that means that they still have webs in place. And it's not really a negative term. It just means, hey, you have a thin web, let's add more strings. Oh, you only have 3 adults, well, let's add more anchors. So no matter what the situation is with the kid, we just say more strings, more anchors. Right? So then we come to the actual young person. We call this growing the balloon. So all of these things, these are the environment in which the young person lives. This is their developmental ecology on the outside, right? The things that change constantly. But in every individual, you and me, we have things that never change. And we call this like the DNA, or the balloon. And it consists of 5 things. We have gender. Our research shows that girls are just bigger balloons. They tend to not need as many strings to stay supported. And they don't often leave those supports, even sometimes in negative situations. They prefer relationship, like the joke that I use with teenagers a lot of times is for example, the other thing is grit, and this is the stick-to-itiveness, that competitive person that never gives up. So the military person that refuses to die when they're injured because they have that family that's waiting for them back at home, and they're going to army crawl 4 miles to get to help because they refuse to give up. Versus the person who just kind of loses hope, right? So that's measured though. Everyone has an element of that, right? Then we have what's called the sense of wonder. And this is kind of the spiritual sense that people have, no matter what faith base you are or lack of faith, you have a question of what's out there and how you explain it. So this could be science, it could be Christianity, it could be Islam, it could be Jewish faith, it could be just questioning and living your life in the question of what's out there that's beyond me. Then we have smarts. So a lot of times in schools we ask, how smart are you? And we ask, how are you smart? The different types of intelligences. So different people might be very musical. Those people that that can sit down at a piano and just start playing because they know that it's just natural to them, right? People who are naturally good at fixing things, not me. Okay, so like people that have those specific types of intelligences. And then we have positive social orientation. And basically this is just saying when you walk into a room, you're okay with being there. It doesn't mean that you're not shy. There was an institute that actually studied shyness. Shyness has nothing to do with it. It has to do with you being comfortable in the room. So you may walk into a room and not want to necessarily socially engage. You might sit in the corner and have your little party snack at the party, and you're okay with being there. And if someone came up to talk to you, you'd be fine with it, but you're not actually out there to engage people. But the level of orientation. So each one of these things are DNA. I can't change these things in a kid. I can only, as an anchor, I can only amplify or erode these things based on what I'm doing with them. So, and that's one way that we can help them also measure their growth, right? Those come in different sizes. Sorry, I can't really. This is 80% of all teenagers, kind of the average size. And we have 10% that are extra small, 10% that are extra big. A lot of times these extra big ones are when you have like Boys and Girls Club or nonprofits that have these kids that came off the street and all of a sudden they just do great things and everything was against them. Most of those kids are big balloons. And the same with a little balloon, we just say more adults, more strings. Within this also, within this one and the next one, so this blue one, this is called scissor cuts. And the green and the blue actually, I added this isn't part of the normal one, is a part of what's called the ACE study. The ACE study is the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And scissor cuts are the things that happen to kids that are either out of their control or in the control that directly affect the web. But there's an element of ACE that also is the severe trauma that directly affects their balloon. And so we look at scissor cuts as things that we can help as anchors. So if a kid doesn't have food, that may be something that I can provide for him. So I add a string, right? But if a kid has gone a year eating only like dog food, that's going to be a trauma, right? That's going to affect his balloon. And we call those sinkers. Those are things that happen in a kid's life that totally affect the ability to be resilient, right? To bounce back. And we just say they're not broken. They just need more strings and more anchors. So it doesn't matter how small or how many sinkers they have, the more strings you have and the more adults you have always has capacity to keep them above ground. And then at that point, the only reason they would be falling through the cracks is by personal choice and pushing themselves through their web for various reasons. Then we have indigo. Indigo is caring for the carers. And basically, this is a way that we measure to see if the young person is gracious and shows that gratitude to these people holding their strengths. So you could actually ask adults, hey, do you believe that kids recognize and know the good that you're doing in their life? And if you do, how do you know that? And then the last one is violet. This is the social norms. So it's said, webs of support aren't bulletproof. So if you live in an area where social norms are really, really negative, you could have all the support in the world and all the anchors in the world, but the environment in which you live may not be conducive to keeping you on your web. So like one of my students was murdered in Fairbanks in April. Huge balloon, tons of support, wrong place, wrong time, shot. Had nothing to do with this, it had to do with the social norm, right? So we talk about with social norms, hey, if we can get the young people to come to learn about this stuff, the more young people that know about these things, the more opportunities they have to regulate and change the social norms from negative to positive. And the way that we measure all this is through what we call the student support card. And the student support card is a survey that we give students that looks like this. It always feels so big when I draw it. And each one of these represents one of the colors. And as they take the survey, they can actually look at what this snapshot is what we call it, of how strong they are in each area. So let's say they have 3 anchors, they have 10 tangible, 15 of these. Then we measure to see how big their balloon is. We could actually see where they're at, and the way that we measure the graph is actually by how strong they are. So we actually are looking at this, not this. And most organizations would look at this and create strategies on how to fill that. Instead, we look at this and base everything we do on those strengths so that those will continue to increase.